These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
It's a scoop session with our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department. It is NBA Draft Week. It is NBA Free Agency Weekend coming up. Sunday is when the negotiations can start. And so let's start off with a little reckless speculation, some inside information. Doogie's been making phone calls, sending text messages. Hello, Darren. How are you, sir?
I am well, Phil. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you. Had a nice conversation yesterday with Tom Crean, who's doing some serious satellite NBA draft work. So we had a nice conversation about what the Wolves could do at 27 and 37, plus where Anthony Edwards can improve this summer. So that was fun. Had a nice conversation last night with Cam Christie. Spoke with Tyler Wall the other day. He's not going to get drafted out of Lakeville North, Wisconsin Badgers, but he worked out for the Wolves recently, so he gave me some insight about that. We have the Chris Finch contract extension, so lots going on. When will arbitration take place? That whole brouhaha. Heck, there's some people on the Laurie A-Rod side suggesting they don't think Glenn Taylor's willing to pay the luxury tax, right? Because there's some apprehension from the Glenn side about whether Mark and Alex can pay, going back to that ESPN.com story a few weeks ago. So there's a lot going on.
So, okay, Judd, you lob the first question here in a second after we say hello to Nicolay Law, the exclusive personal injury law firm of SKOR North podcasts. Nicolay Law, just a bunch of local people who live and serve in the communities they reside in that happen to have law degrees. Normal folks with law degrees here to help you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. If you've been injured and you're in need of assistance, Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers, Nicolay Law, are here to help you. NicolayLaw.com or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY, Judd.
All right, Dukes. Draft-wise, do we expect the Wolves to stand pat and make their picks? As you talked about, they can't trade a first-round pick beforehand, but they can trade it during the draft. So what is your expectation as far as what Tim Connelly's strategy is going to be in an approach to a draft, which is a very rare Wolves thing because the first-round picks are not that high this season, which is a good thing.
Correct. I mean, they're open-minded. Judd, the Brooklyn Nets are on the lookout for a pick. The Brooklyn Nets have interest in pick 11. But if you're the Wolves, when looking at the salary cap landscape, when thinking about luxury tax ramifications, second apron, when you think about having that pick 27 contract plus that pick 37 contract on the books for the next few years, that's advantageous, right? When thinking about paying all these other guys big time money. So I don't know if I see a match, but certainly listening, absolutely listening, open-minded. So like I can't sit here and tell you, no way, no how, 100%. They are selecting a player at pick 27. I cannot do that because they will listen all the way until they are on the clock. There's all sorts of different scenarios. I talked about this with Tom Crean yesterday. He brought it up unprompted that he's hearing steam that Isaiah Collier, this point guard who just completed his freshman year at USC, certainly the Wolves saw him in person a lot, even going back multiple years. There was steam pre-draft that he could go as high as number 1. All the uncertainty, this not being considered a strong draft. There was chatter this time last year about Isaiah Collier going number 1 in the 2024 draft. He had an okay year, but I get it. Like, there's some shooting concerns. Overall, USC had a bad year. Coaching change right now. My guy Muss is there coaching USC. There's a possibility, Tom brought this up, that Isaiah Collier falls all the way to pick 27.
Wow.
If that happens, the Wolves need to jump all over that. The other guy that Tom brought up was Terrence Shannon Jr. of Illinois, acquitted, had some legal issues in Lawrence, Kansas, up just a couple weeks ago. He came in for a recent workout with the Wolves. Like, you watch Illinois, like, that dude's a bucket getter. He's a scorer. Weakness of this draft, if you could get a player like Terrence Shannon Jr. who could instantly help you next season at pick 27, to me, that would also be a no-brainer. Now, if Collier and Shannon Jr. are on the board, you have an interesting decision to make. The other guy I like, but Tom doesn't like him as much, sort of likes him, said he would fit here as a corner three-point shooter, Baylor Shireman of Creighton, but certainly concerns about how he doesn't use his right hand, some athletic concerns, just some overall concerns that Tom had. I'll put that conversation on the KSTP shameless plug, KSTP Sports webpage later today so people can hear the full analysis of Tom breaking down Shireman. But I know Tom loves Shannon Jr. and Collier. So that's why I say, Judd, I don't know for sure, depending on how the board shakes out, if a certain player is sitting there at 27, to me, the Wolves are going to gobble that guy up, not trade the pick.
Yeah, Terrence Shannon Jr. would be a really interesting one. Just like, I don't watch a ton of college basketball. Big Ten is usually where I do find myself flipping around, but that dude was pouring it in last year. So I guess my question off of this, because you could find a player to maybe help you with your 27th overall pick. If they hang on to Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, and right now there's no indications that there's anything happening on those fronts, what are the best ways to acquire players at this point? I mean, would you say that is the 27th pick a viable way to find a rotation player immediately? Is it the trade market underneath Karl Anthony Towns? Is it like veteran minimum free agents? Like how do they make this thing better roster wise if they don't make a huge trade, I guess?
Yeah, so on Cat, still no steam. Like somebody asked me the other day on X, hey, Jeremy Grant, Portland is possibly shopping Grant, open-minded to trading Grant. Hey, what about the possibility of Jeremy Grant ending up here? Maybe a better fit at the 4 with this roster. To me, no, but this question was asked. I checked. The Wolves are not one of the teams that has inquired about Jeremy Grant. If you were trading for Jeremy Grant, that would mean it's either a 2-team or a 3-team trade. In all likelihood, Cat would go out. That just points to, again, what I've talked about for a couple of weeks. There just isn't any Cat trade steam on my front. It's veteran minimum type guys like Eric Gordon. Could you get a guy like Eric Gordon to come here that he feels like, hey, the Wolves are knocking on the door of a championship? By the way, has a good relationship with Mike Conley Jr. Is it possible? This is not a free agent destination, Phil. We understand that. But when you are this good, when you feel like, hey, we can win the championship this time next year, you might be able to convince a guy like Eric Gordon to come here on a veteran minimum type deal. Somebody of that ilk. There is optimism that Monte Morris will be back on a veteran minimum deal. I don't know if 2 years ago you would have foresaw Monte Morris signing a veteran minimum deal summer of 2024, but that is something to keep an eye on. There is genuine interest, both sides, in a reunion with Kyle Anderson. I get it. The Wolves are not paying Kyle Anderson the same salary he made last year. He does like it here. He noted in his postseason media availability how he has a son who's autistic. Him and his wife really love the schooling that his son gets here, right? So that has to be a factor, family factor. He loves Chris Finch. Now, Kyle plays multiple positions, but, is he really a 4? Like maybe he views himself more as a 3. So maybe he would talk to Chris about maybe using him slightly differently next year. But there is genuine interest in a reunion with Kyle Anderson. The question is he willing to come back at like $5.5-ish million, somewhere in that ballpark compared to $9.5-ish million? Jordan McLaughlin, to me, he's going to end up elsewhere. I just don't foresee a scenario where J-Mac is back. But Phil, it's pick 27, it's pick 37, and it's trying to get Kyle back, it's trying to get Monte back, and it's
Leonard
signing
Miller?
a guy like an Eric Gordon, esque player for a veteran minimum. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of flexibility. I just don't think, Phil, I have not heard Naz Reid trades team. I've not heard Nickeil Alexander-Walker trades team. So I just don't know, like, maybe you have an idea, but I just don't know what that would be. If you're not trading Cat, there's just no steam there. I've not heard of Gobert trade steam. You're not trading Ant. There's nothing on the Jaden McDaniels front that I'm aware of. So, like, what trade are you making?
And if you're second apron, you can't aggregate contracts. You can't go like Nickeil plus this plus that for big
good
salary.
reminder. Yes.
So it makes it even harder. I mean, what about some of the, like I mentioned, Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, these guys who've been sitting on the bench and developing, and they're throughout the entire playoffs. We were in the building early enough just before fans came in, and the guys that you hear about but never see are putting in an hour's worth of work with the player development coaches. I mean, is there a chance? Now, Finch doesn't love playing. If you're not at a certain level of experience, it's a little bit Tom Thibodeau-like in the way that he handles that cutoff. But, are you hearing anything about the Wendell Moores, the Leonard Millers, and those guys?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are in there working on a daily basis, putting in all sorts of work. I mean, I still have question marks. I like him personally, Wendell Moore Jr., but I wonder about his viability for the next few years as a legit NBA rotation guy. I don't necessarily have those questions about Josh Minott and Leonard Miller. I mean, I would envision one of those guys, if not both, playing some minutes next year. I'm not talking significant minutes, but enough minutes. Like, they have an option on Josh Minott's contract coming up at $2 million. That's a no-brainer. Of course, they are going to exercise that option on Minott's deal. They also like Jalen Clark, but you think about him coming back from the Achilles injury. He'll make his Wolves debut, Vegas Summer League. He was cleared back in late March, early April, maybe even a couple weeks prior, but they weren't going to rush it. So, he's more an Iowa Wolves type player next year. So maybe he's somebody we're talking about this time next year for the 25-26 season, but that's another guy. Heck, they do have first right of refusal on Luka Garza. Is there still a future there with Luka? What does that look like? I wonder if some team offers him, though, and says, okay, he can be our backup big. He can score. Yeah, there's defensive limitations, big-time defensive limitations, but that guy can score enough. Let's make him a decent offer. The Wolves are not going to match that. So that's something I would keep an eye on the Luka Garza front. But, hey, they'd love to bring back Luka. That's another guy that's been over at Mayo Clinic Square on a daily basis. I mean, he's acting as if he's going to be back. The Wolves certainly are presenting to him, hey, we want you back. We see you as part of our future. But certainly Minott and Miller, I would put Minott at the top of the list, Phil.
Hey, Duke, despite the back and forth from both sides, clearly that to me equates to trying to cause fear, right? That, if so-and-so owns the team, they're not going to exceed the tax. No, if that guy owns the team, what do we think the reality is? Because I'll say two things. One is, I don't think Conley agrees to come back and extends the deadline if he knows of any mandate to cut for cutting's sake. I'm not saying he can't make trades. I'm saying if they said, if one side's like, no, dude, you can't, you gotta move Cat. You've got no choice. The other thing is, I don't know that Chris Finch signs an extension because, I mean, he's a pretty hot commodity right now. I don't know if he signs an extension if there is doom and gloom from, hey, we're going to have to trade some of the guys. So do we think there's a reality to this being put out there, or do we think that this is just basically both sides trying to smear each other? But it seems like all of the moves internally basketball-wise have been fairly positive.
Yeah, it's more the latter, right? I mean, it's not as public as the smearing was in late March,
right?
But that to me is what it is. When you're a Final Four team, Judd, when you have home court advantage in the Western Conference Finals, you run this thing back. You just do. Yeah, tweak here, tweak there, right? The Celtics get all the way to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago, then make the trade for Drew Holiday, make the trade for Kristaps Porzingis, right? So they came to the realization we need to do a bunch, right? Brad Stevens now looked at as the executive of the year after those moves last summer. But if you're the Wolves, a tweak here, a tweak there, I get that. But you need to run this thing back. You just do. Now, maybe that's more my opinion, although I'm just telling you, I've not sensed of any big move coming, that there is something to be said about patience, continuity. You think about Tim Connolly in Denver. History suggests with Tim, this is the route he likes to take. And so, yeah, you need to suck it up. You need to pay that luxury tax. You need to be a second apron team. You can't blow this thing up. And I sense Glenn at 83 years old, if he remains majority owner, even if, the other side is suggesting, hey, there are some question marks about whether Glenn is willing to pay the luxury tax. Glenn did pay the luxury tax a few years ago. It was after they made the D'Angelo Russell trade. And I get it. It wasn't way into the luxury tax. We're talking this time around. Phil, you might have the exact numbers in front of you, but we're talking many millions of dollars this time around. In 20, whatever it was, 19 or 20, after the D'Angelo Russell trade, that was just a few $1 million, right?
Well, I'll tell you
things
this.
considered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you this just from what I have heard, and you know how I have stated my opinion about Glenn Taylor over the years.
Oh, I know.
think people
Oh,
are
yeah.
right. But
I
I
was
have
at a
heard
party on Saturday. Some people came up to me and said, "Hey, we love Phil. We love what he says about Glenn." They wanted to pick my brain on this situation, but they were singing your praises for ripping
Oh,
Glenn as
wow.
often as you do.
But I will say this: I have heard very reliably that he is not blinking at paying whatever the luxury tax second apron is not making him flinch as long as he owns this team for the coming months. And I have also heard behind the scenes that the Wolves are projecting to potentially lose 9 figures in the next season cycle based on luxury tax, second apron. They obviously don't have. I mean, they sent out the release yesterday that they did fill the lower bowl with season tickets, which is so they're going to have a nice jump in season tickets, but it's not like they have a new state-of-the-art arena to bring all the revenue back in like maybe the Warriors a few years ago. So I guess that is the one thing I have heard above all else, that there is no flinching in terms of budget and tearing this thing down for financial reasons on the Glenn Taylor side.
Yes. I mean, when you're 83, you only have so much longer, right? So, yes, I believe everything you just said. Heck, you think about the Lynx, as successful as they are. It's not like the WNBA is profitable, right? Now, when you're thinking about the new national TV contract coming up, you have a chance to recoup some of that money, right? I mean, the money we're talking about with this national TV contract, this next NBA national TV contract, I mean, we're talking just stupid money, right? So when you divide that up, and the Wolves get their share of that, you're recouping some of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact number, 9 figures though. Yeah, sounds about right, right? When you're talking about 75-ish million into the luxury tax, they're not being able to grab from that piece of the pie. Those teams that aren't over the luxury tax, then you get to grab from the pie. So the Wolves are paying into the pie, don't get to grab from that pie like years past. So yeah, it's going to be a huge number. That's why, hey, this time last year I was saying this summer has a chance to be really fascinating, which it did. If the Wolves had lost, right? A lot of people thought when the Phoenix matchup came out, hey, the Wolves are losing in the first round. If the Wolves lost to Phoenix, I'm telling you, Phil, we'd be having a much different conversation right now.
Yeah.
To the Wolves' credit, when you get to the Western Conference Finals, you just can't blow this thing up. So that changes the dynamic. So now I'm shifting it again another year. This time next summer has a chance to be very, very fascinating. I mean, Naz Reid, there's no way he's exercising his player option to be back in 25, 26. So if you're not, you're going to hit the open market. Or are the Wolves going to pay him a ton of money, then trade Cat? You can just point to a lot of different things that signal next summer, the summer of 25, is the one that's going to now be very, very fascinating.
My favorite name that I've seen floated to this point, and things would have to happen, but with the Bulls are shaking up their roster, and they just brought in Josh Giddey, at 21 years old, whatever he is. That Lonzo Ball, who hasn't played in 2 years, is looking to make a comeback. He's been rehabbing the knee injury, and apparently he's in, the best physical condition he's been in since a couple years ago. I would take a stab at that on a league minimum. If he's looking to just get right for a year, he's a big 6'5", 6'6", great distributor who's been knocking down, at least as of 2 years ago, almost 40% of his 3-pointers. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, Duke. Just a little reckless speculation between friends. If Lonzo Ball said, listen, let's say there's a buyout in Chicago and I just need somewhere to get right for a minute, like Derrick Rose back in the day. Is that at all the realistic name to throw out?
Well, I mean, sign me up, right? But he's still under contract. You have his contractual terms in front of you. So it would have to be a buyout. He's not an unrestricted free agent.
It has to be a buyout. Yep.
He's still on the books, right? So he's not going to sacrifice his money. He's doing everything he can, even if it's not realistic, to get back on the court, because he's not going to walk away from that big money that Chicago gave him. So it would have to be some sort of buyout situation. But sure, for the vet minimum, yes. Now, hey, that's a very extensive physical. We need to know that he literally can do anything on the basketball court, because after missing 2 straight years, I don't know, Phil. right? So you would have to rely on your doctors on that one. But when talking about the vet minimum, and I get it, it's 7 figures, but hey, reasonable, right? Yeah, I would roll those dice just to see. Sure, but there's a lot of factors there, right, for him to even hit the open market. But sure, I do wonder about Chicago. Now, the Wolves are not in on Zach LaVine, but what does Chicago do with Zach LaVine? I mean, I still think a need here, like we talked about this sometime in the last week or two, how, okay, you're the number 1 defense, but you were middle of the pack offensively. How do you jump up to being a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense, right? But more specifically, you need another attacker. Like, I go back to the DeJounte Murray conversation. Is there any scenario? We know this front office has had interest in DeJounte Murray in the past. Is there any match you can come up with that, oh, by the way, trumps what 3 or 4 other teams will offer, whether it's the Lakers or another team, right? Because if Atlanta is truly shopping DeJounte Murray, or at least lets it be known, hey, we are breaking up Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, we are trading one of these guys, come one, come all with your offers. How would the Wolves offer trump other offers?
Boy.
But I'm just saying, somebody like DeJounte Murray, like that sort of player, somebody who can attack, but also, hey, he shot the 3 pretty darn well this past season. DeJounte Murray, to me, would be a really nice fit. But I just don't know, because you need to give up a good amount to get a player like DeJounte Murray. But more specifically, when I say, hey, you need to find a way to get the offense to jump up, that's the type of player I'm speaking about.
It's so, yeah. I think he's like a $30 million block. Could you do it? Obviously, if you decided to trade Towns, then like there's a lot more names that are in the mix. But is there any way for you to do it? But you can't aggregate. You couldn't do like Nikhil plus.
That's what Bobby Marks was laying out to me a couple weeks ago, that it's just so incredibly hard right now to trade Cat. It gets really difficult. And where is Atlanta at when it comes to first apron, potentially second apron? So I think they have at least some restrictions. Yeah, the Wolves are handcuffed. It's just not easy to do.
Atlanta's below the first apron, so Atlanta can do it. But yeah, it's just okay. But the Wolves are, as of right now, the Wolves are in the second apron, which means they wouldn't be able to say, hey, maybe there's a way we could get DeJounte Murray and keep Cat by trading Nikhil and Nas. I don't know, man. Like, that's where. Do you want to start partying with some of your key players?
Yeah, run it back, but when thinking about the 25-26 season, okay, like both of Nas and Cat, like, no, I just don't foresee both of them being here for the 25-26 season. Then Nikhil Alexander-Walker. Like, as valuable a contract, team-friendly contract as there is in the league, how is he here in 25-26? Like, this time next summer is Nas' opportunity to cash out. So if you're thinking about it, 1 year out, right? Could you do something with Na? But then, yes, Phil, you're handcuffed being a second apron team.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll get to the rest of Doogie's Scoops Bags. I know Judd has a Twins question here. But Dennis Kirk is here for all of you riders out there, all you Ragnars who love riding season, motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, dirt bikes. DennisKirk.com has over 185,000 parts, apparel, and accessories for all of those aforementioned vehicles. They have a great event coming up, too, in just a few weeks. The first annual Minnesota Garage Build Bike Show, powered by Dennis Kirk, Saturday, July 13th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Running Aces Casino and Racetrack. Dozens of custom-built motorcycles, hundreds of dollars in Dennis Kirk gift cards, local food trucks, a live DJ, and plenty of other things. DennisKirk.com to find out more details. Also, Burnsville Heating and Air is hiring. So if you're looking for a career change, maybe you just graduated high school, or you're looking to just shake things up a little bit. Burnsville Heating and Air is offering a variety of positions. And by the way, you don't even need experience necessarily. They are hiring leads and finishers and equipment setters, but also apprentices. And they're offering up to a $2,000 sign-on bonus, full-time year-round work with tons of overtime opportunities all over the Twin Cities so you can work close to home. 401k with 4% employer contribution. health insurance, dental, vision, paid time off. Apply now if this interests you at burnsvilleheating.com. That's burnsvilleheating.com and click careers. Judd, fire away.
On the Twins, Dukes, what have you heard, if any, speculation, reckless or otherwise, about Brooks Lee, who we were at the game last week and he hit 2 home runs. He's absolutely torn it up. Most interestingly, that night he was playing second base for the first time. So they definitely are taking a look-see then. It appears that he is for sure right now ahead of Julian if there was to be a possible move or call-up. So what do we know about the potential future of Brooks Lee and the fact that he could be, because the trade deadline is July 30th, he could actually be sort of a trade deadline acquisition just from St. Paul.
Yeah, I mean, he could be. Yeah, I mean, he's not going anywhere else. The Twins foresee him in their lineup at some point, not some other team's lineup. By the way, Declan, nice job with the first pitch. Certainly better than, right? Dallas Turner for sure. J.J. McCarthy for sure.
Yes.
50 Cent for sure.
Oh,
I don't know where else I'd kind of put you on the pecking order, but
somewhere in the middle.
Nice job with the first pitch.
Thank you.
Somewhere in the middle.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Somewhere
I have no doubt. I mean, you'll be asked back to deliver another one, and it'll be even better next time. So nice work on the first pitch. Brooks Lee Judd has played second base before. I get it. This most recent run, this was a new thing, and so I get putting a spotlight on it. But, you know, coach's son at Cal Poly, his dad's the head coach at Cal Poly. He's played second base along the way. Like, this isn't some, like, huge deal. But, yeah, when thinking long-term, like, where does he fit? Okay, well, Royce is at third. Carlos is at shortstop. Okay, Brooks, second base, right? Like, it's incredibly logical. You put him there. And, yeah, pecking order-wise, surely, right now he's ahead of Eddie Julian. So he's the next guy. So, like, if Kyle Farmer gets hurt tonight or tomorrow in Arizona, that's the move. You're calling up Brooks Lee. But, like, I know people are saying DFA Kyle Farmer. It just hasn't been on the Twins' radar. In fact, he's on his best run. Declan, you probably know the numbers better than I, but the last 2 or 3 weeks is the best stretch of the season for Kyle Farmer. They're just not DFAing Kyle Farmer. Like I opined on TV on Sunday night, I'd love to see my guy Matt Wallner up right now. But they're not going to do it. It has seemed, going back pre this stretch, the Twins value Trevor Larnach more than they do Matt Wallner. Plus, Austin Martin is on a run, so you're not sending Austin Martin down. So, like, I'll continue to say, Matt Wallner is a good trade chip. He would look good. I can tell you for sure, he'd look good in the Kansas City Royals outfield. He'd look good in the Seattle Mariners outfield. I can name a few other teams. And hey, I get it, in division, a team you're battling with, maybe it doesn't seem logical to trade a Matt Wallner to the Kansas City Royals or even the Seattle Mariners. But I just know Matt Wallner, at 20, what is he now, 6 years old, he's rotting away in the minors. And I get it, there was a lot of swing and miss in May. June has been better than May. May, in many ways, was a disaster. But Matt Wallner belongs in a big league outfield. But on Brooks Lee, it's when, not if, Judd. It's just a matter of when that timing works out. But I think, like, the first time we see him, I would foresee some sort of injury situation. It's inevitable. Somebody is going to get hurt. That's how he gets the initial call up, that it's not a DFA Kyle Farmer type situation.
Let's go through the rest of your scoop bag here, Dukes. Last couple minutes, what else do you have left in there for us today?
Well, I mean, I cited the Tom Crean conversation. So, like, he's been in contact with Ant via text. At least he'll catch up with Ant soon, his guy from the University of Georgia. But, like, he sees that next step, Ant being, you know, an NBA Finals type MVP, right? Like, when you're all NBA, how do you take another step forward? Well, he's like, Tom thinks Ant can actually go right more, that he goes left too much. That this might sound a little weird, but Tom thinks Ant can actually play downhill more. You know, can still add to his post game a little bit, but Tom laid out just all sorts of ways that Ant can take another step forward, starting with Team USA in a few weeks, heading into the 24-25 season. Cam Christie, the former Gopher, has a chance to be the first Gopher in 20 years to go in the first round. Had a nice conversation with him last night. He had just flown back from Boston. When I say back, he's been training in the New York City area, so he's got an apartment there. But he was with Boston. 13 workouts total I guess that's a little bit of a nugget. The Celtics don't publicly announce their draft workout. So Cam Christie yesterday, draft workout with the champion Boston Celtics. Yes, he had a workout here. Yes, he told me the workout here went very well. It was a good workout. If he's on the board at 37, especially at 27, if you grab a guy that maybe can help you sooner rather than later, an older type guy, I get it, Phil. Chris Finch will even play a rookie next year, 8 to 10 minutes a game. That's another question. But if you take an older type guy, a Terrence Shannon, a Baylor Shireman, somebody like that, a KJ Simpson, a Tristan Newton at pick 27, if Cam Christie is there at pick 37, maybe you go developmental guy there. And he fully understands Cam is going to spend a good chunk, if not all of next season, in the G League. He's one of the youngest players in this draft at 18 years old. Ben Johnson, Gophers coach, Jason Kemp, Gophers assistant coach, flying out to New York to support Cam. It'll be in. Like, does he go Wednesday or have to wait until Thursday? This new phenomenon this year of a 2-day NBA draft. So he will be at the draft, but he may have to sit through all of the first round on Wednesday, then wait until Thursday to hear his name. But I'll tell you what, with all the recent steam on Cam Christie, I don't even know if he'll be there at pick 37. Yeah. Maybe he drifts into Thursday, but if he does, I would imagine he goes before pick 37. Twins note, Alex Kirilloff got a second opinion on his back yesterday. I'm still waiting for word on that, but he was seeking out a second opinion on that back injury. Still a weird situation there with Alex. Hey, maybe time will heal some of those wounds, right? The front office, the staff has with Alex. Unique situation there. And hey, I'm the one who said, gentlemen, a few years ago, write that down. Alex Kirilloff one day will win a batting title. I'm not quite sure that's looking so good right now. But that was when he had his old swing. Maybe he'll go back full time. He did for a little bit, like first 2-3 weeks of this season. The swing has kind of been all over the place. But if he goes back to that old swing, maybe I'll one day win that, write that down. But right now it looks like I am going to fail miserably on that. Write that down. The Chris Finch extension. So the one in April 22 he signed was for 3 years plus 1. Some sort of club option. So he had 1 year remaining, technically guaranteed. So the Wolves ripped that up. They give him a nice raise. He is now signed through the 27-28 season. Caught up, Judd, on the hockey front with my good buddy Mike Gensel, a scout for, do they have a name? The Utah Hockey Club, formerly the Arizona Coyotes.
They don't have a name.
All right, so anyway, he loves Logan Cooley, by the way. Like, he's like, if they did that draft all over again, the former Gopher Logan Cooley wouldn't go pick 3. He would go pick 1. Like, he was singing the praises of Logan Cooley, just being a center and just being elite. Like, they love Logan Cooley's ceiling. Like, he's already off to a really good start with that franchise. But anyway, we spoke about his son, Jake Gensel. You think about NHL free agency starting in a handful of days. I mean, Jake is going to hit the jackpot. He really wants to be back in Carolina. The issue is Carolina's trying to get him back at a certain number, and it looks like there's going to be a little bit more money elsewhere, whether it's Vancouver or somewhere else. But super happy for Mike's son Jake, who's going to hit the jackpot in the next few days.
Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department.
One more, caught up with Javon Moore, Minnetonka High School. He'll play for the Gophers in 2 years, play for Sioux Falls in the USHL next year. Left wing, 6'3". He's expected to go top 75. He won't go Friday. He'll go Saturday. The question is, does he go like mid-second round, late second round, or sometime in the third round? But really good young man. It was cool for him. His family, he loves the Wild. His family has Wild season tickets. His first interview at the draft combine a couple weeks ago in Buffalo was with the Minnesota Wild. Yeah. So that was really, really cool for Javon. He ended up missing the Minnetonka High School graduation. Pretty good excuse. I had to be in Buffalo for the draft combine, so he wasn't able to walk across the stage, receive his diploma. But, hey, for good reason. But that was pretty cool that his first interview at the combine was with the hometown Wild.
Yeah. Love it, man. Dukes, great stuff. We'll do it again on a Reckless Speculation Thursday. We'll recap night 1 of the NBA draft. We'll see you then.
I like it. We'll talk on Thursday. See you, boys.
All right. Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department. Just a real quick random question for you guys. So The Arizona Coyotes moving to Utah, and Utah's refusing to use the word coyotes. There's tons of coyotes in Utah. There's more coyotes than jazz music in Utah.
So the Coyotes get to keep the name because if they get a new team back, they can use it again. That is basically right. Judd,
Oh, really?
That was part of it.
Oh, funny how that works.
Yeah.
But it basically fell through last night because
did it?
The land that they were going to bid on has been pulled off the market, and so they basically said that's done. So, but yes, they are. You now leave names. The Browns started that. Cleveland started that.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, and yes,
The Wild.
when the New Orleans Jazz moved to Utah in what 80, 79 or something like that, you just moved. I mean,
Let's go Jazz.
the Los Angeles Lakers.
Let's go
The Los Angeles
Wild.
The Lakers make no sense.
Yeah, it should be the Oceans.
Yeah.
There's no lake. We got the lakes. They took the name.
If we ranked all the NBA teams based on most nonsensical names, Lakers number 1, Jazz number 2. What are we doing here?
Yep. Because teams used to just move and keep names.
No.
Sometimes.
Anyways, glad we got that figured out. Little scoop session on this Tuesday here with Doogie, Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd.